Hello there, everyone. It's Nick Dettmann here for another edition of the Dettmann Media Podcast, where we go over the latest in social media and digital marketing tips, trends analysis, as well as website analysis, tips, design ideas, and SEO strategies and tips, and everything in between. So glad you can join me here today on this edition of the Dettmann Media Podcast. Just want to thank our sponsors here who graciously supports the Dettmann Media Podcast here. We got a couple of them here. So first one is 5-Star Complete Asphalt Services in West Haven, Connecticut. They're experts in asphalt maintenance and pros at serving you. Get them a call today and get your free quote for your next asphalt resealing, crack filling, and everything in between project. Give them a call at 475-414-0125. Again, 475-414-0125, or visit them on the web at 5starcompleteasphaltservices.com, as well as the West Bend Theater Company, a nonprofit theater performing arts group in West Bend, Wisconsin. Visit their website today at westbendtheaterco.com and get your tickets for their next upcoming production of Charles Dickens's A Christmas Carol. Opens December 3rd in West Bend. Website is West Bend Theater Co., and that's R-E on the theater.com. Again, glad you can join me here today on the Dettmann Media Podcast. Got quite a bit to cover, so let's hop right on into it. So, can you believe it's already November? Yikes. In less than 2 months, we're going to be walking in 2022. And kind of with that, it's going to be a new year of challenges, but also opportunities. So kind of look at the glass half full, half empty, whichever way you want to look at it. And best way to do is try and embrace what we've got coming up in 2022. And of course, that's what we're trying to figure out is what will social media marketing look like in 2022? Well, certainly we don't know the exact answer, as that's pretty obvious, but it doesn't hurt to make some predictions. And Hootsuite, I'm a big fan of, and they really do a great job in keeping things up to date. So a little plug there for Hootsuite. I've been using them for quite a long time. Recently made its attempt to do so with a new report that they just released here within the last few days. So, like I said, released, it's a report, was by Hootsuite, and they called it the Social Trends 2022 Report in an effort to predict the 2022 trends on social media. I know I participated in this survey, so it was pretty neat to see what the results are going to be, or what they turned out to be. So, the report, which can be downloaded in its entirety on my blog, which is nicholasdettmann.blogspot.com. It had 18,000 respondents, with 48% of the respondents holding a title of director and above, and 52% being managers and practitioners covering 9 industry. Like I mentioned, I was one of the participants in the survey, so and I do have more information about just the overall makeup of the survey itself and its respondents on my blog as well. So in the report, which is 53 pages long, and it sounds lengthy, but it's really actually not that bad. It's actually kind of a quick read. Hootsuite laid out 5 key takeaways from the survey. The first one was brands finally get community right with the help of creators. Number 2, marketers are going to get creative as consumers wise up to ads. Number 3, social quietly matures out of the marketing department. Number 4, social becomes the heart of the post-pandemic shopping experience. And number 5, social marketers save their brands from the customer service apocalypse. So as you kind of, as we've noted here on this podcast, and if you follow the blog, which hopefully you do, and if you don't, head on over to nicholasdettmann.blogspot.com and click on the old subscribe button. You can get these updates delivered right to your email inbox after each post. So according to, let me back up here. Let me kind of think this through here. So and we've kind of learned this over the last, 18, 20 months now as we've continued to try and work through this pandemic. Social media is still going to likely play a large role in 2022, and like I said, just much like it has nearly the last 2 years. We've kind of seen that even progress before the pandemic, but it's really escalated, certainly within the last couple years, as more and more people are relying on non-personal interactions and communications and shopping experiences just because of the pandemic. But so according to a survey done by Pew Research back in April of this year, 70% of Americans are using social media on a monthly basis. And another study, and this one was done by Statista.com, showed that people with social media accounts has grown 38.6% over the last 4 years, dating back to 2017. And that number is expected to continue to grow by an estimated 10 to 15% over the next 5 years. So the prediction looking like it's going to be more than 80% of people, even 85% of people in America are going to be on social media with it by the year around 2026. And you can imagine we're going to see similar trends in other parts of the world. The report by Hootsuite also detailed some top 3 goals for social in 2022. And those goals are going to be brand awareness, customer acquisitions, and driving conversions. Definitely the last one there in terms of the shopping experience and the customer experience are going to be big things looking at in 2022, as we've definitely have seen many of the social media platforms work toward that, like TikTok, Instagram, Facebook offering shopping options on their platforms. So there's going to be a lot more look at driving conversions through social media sites for businesses. Kind of now looking, kind of breaking down what the report said. When looking at the sizes of companies, what is going to be important to them in 2022. So companies with less than 100 employees are going to use social media as a way to increase acquisition of new customers. And typically those businesses with less than 100 employees are not typically very well known, so that's not a terribly big surprise there. But companies with 100 to nearly 1,000 employees will now use social media to improve the employee experience, followed by brand recognition and risk mitigation. And for companies with more than 1,000 employees, social media will be used kind of the opposite. It will be used for brand protection and risk mitigation, followed by improving the employee experience. So kind of almost a complete opposite of what the companies with less than 1,000 employees are going to try to accomplish. I thought that was quite an interesting result there. So looking at what the challenges in 2022 might be, well, it's going to be consistently producing creative social content as we kind of continue to work through certainly I kind of think back to Facebook and Instagram and the WhatsApp app, and how they're being challenged in terms of how they deliver their content that's posted by people. So that's certainly going to be something to keep an eye on. And that's mostly because, and we've noted this a number of times before, followed by the decline or organic reach and need to increase paid advertising budgets on social, and integrating data and technology to build a unified customer view are also going to be very big challenges on social media in 2022. Just again, trying to adhere to the demand of more transparency, and customers trying to really put the pressure on these social media platforms to be transparent, but also be understanding of what they want to see in their timelines going forward. And want to kind of circle back again to that last view, is kind of an extension of that. Is again, that's the technology to build a unified customer view. I think that's just going to be kind of the challenge overall in marketing and digital marketing going into 2022 and even extending into 2023, as it's been well documented and pretty much reported that third-party cookies are going to be gone by around this time in 2 years, in 2023. In addition, companies such as Google and Apple have already rolled out tools for their customers to opt out of data tracking. Thus, this will make it harder for people like marketers to get a clear picture of their consumers' demographics, their interests, and so forth. So that is going to be a continued evaluation process in 2022. It's kind of we can continue to figure out what exactly that's going to mean. I know the details in a lot of ways have been pretty vague up to this point, because I think we're still seeing places like Google and Apple not really knowing exactly what they're going to do in terms of how their data privacy is going to work. Certainly, I was asked about this actually at a panel I was on about the email marketing and the email privacy protection that Apple rolled out recently, and it was asked about, do we anticipate a lot of people opting into this? And it's right now it seems like there's a lot of people that are. I mean, a number I saw a couple weeks ago was the excess of 60% of eligible users had already implemented this tool. I see that number growing over the next several months. But the other point that was made on the panel discussion that I was on was, and I've kind of told this to others, that I wouldn't be surprised in maybe 6-7 months that people will be tired of getting the ads that they're really not relevant to them and really kind of flood their inbox. And they get a better understanding of, okay, this is why these mechanisms are in place, is to make sure you're actually getting content that you've indicated you've wanted in the past, rather than getting you something completely off to what you want, and it creates a more frustrating experience. So I would not be surprised that we'll get a collection of people that will decide to say, you know what, maybe it's not that bad that some of my information is out there. And it goes back to the point of transparency, where the senders and the marketers have to be far more transparent to say, this is why we have this information, this is what we're doing with it, and so forth. So I can see that happening down the line. And the last point here that I wanted to make regarding the Hootsuite report, I spent a little more time on this topic than I initially thought, but again, really a lot of good discussion about this, and a lot of good insight about what 2022 may look like from a social media standpoint. Facebook and Instagram are going to remain effective platforms, but there is concern for how long that'll last. I think this year, and even going back into 2022, TikTok has seen just an enormous push into the markets, and it says a 700% increase in perceived effectiveness among the marketers that were surveyed in this report. In addition, 36% of companies are planning to increase their investment on TikTok, compared to just 13% a year ago. And lastly, Pinterest and Snapchat are also seeing growth as well. So it's going to be an interesting look in 2022 from a social media and digital standpoint. So certainly things I know we'll talk about continuing going forward. This next topic here, just kind of a little news tip item. Not more or less a tip, but it's just kind of let people know that this happened. So TikTok users nationally, especially in Illinois here in the United States, are going to be able to benefit after a $92 million settlement was reached. According to a website that details the settlement, TikTok was alleged in the complaint, quote, to have violated federal and state law by collecting and using, without sufficient notice and consent, plaintiffs' personal data in connection with their use of the TikTok Make Your Day video sharing application and or its predecessor app, musical.ly, which was distributed in the U.S. Of course, TikTok says it denied the allegations in the complaint, but the settlement affects two groups of people. It does affect people nationwide in the U.S., but also more specifically to the people who reside and live and use the app within the state of Illinois. Those eligible nationwide are those who use the app before September 30th of this year. For those eligible in Illinois, they must reside in Illinois and had used the app while in Illinois before September 30th of this year. Claims can be submitted on one's behalf or more specifically, there we go, for a minor child. I do have more information about the settlement and what steps to take by clicking on a link which I do have on my blog at nicholasdettmann.blogspot.com. Moving forward, there was also a report that came out through Maverick, an influencer marketing technology company, breaking down kind of what the understanding the digital audience. And it's the first time in our history, especially here in the United States, there are four generations of people in the workforce. So simply put, we have a more diverse group of people that live today and have all different backgrounds and abilities, well, presumably interacting with each other, especially in the workforce. So thus, in the digital age, it can be challenging to figure out which one is your appropriate target audience, as the generations definitely differ, going back to the people of the World War II era, all the way here into the to the 21st century. So again, Maverick released its influencer marketing guide by demographic, and it's an incredible look at the different demographics that make up the population. The company said in its introduction to the reports, quote, "We live in a technology-driven era with overwhelming domestic tech literacy amongst most living generations. But that doesn't mean one influencer marketing strategy fits all. So many factors contribute to how customers interact with social media and branded content. So it's possible to generalize just how any singular customer may react based on their age. What we can do is understand each generation's tech literacy level and keep in mind the driving factors that define their lifetimes." Continued quote says, "Our demographic guide helps provide a foundational understanding not only of what formed each generation's behavior, but what that means for social media and content creators. We'll look at which generation often values in a brand and a marketer, as well as the best platforms to reach each one. We'll talk about opportunities and challenges for each cohort, as well as the kind of content that drives engagement." End quote. It's a 12-page report that breaks down the demographic categories such as Gen Z, Gen Y, or Millennials, Baby Boomers, and so forth. So when you're looking at Millennials, for example, the report defines Millennials, who are also sometimes called Gen Y, or reached adolescence and or adulthood during the 2000s. They were early adopters on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Pinterest. Elder and mid-range millennials taught themselves code during the MySpace era. Boy, that was I remember MySpace. That was actually a lot of fun, if you remember MySpace, for those out there. I am their friends over AOL in high school. I definitely did that. That was a big reason why I can type as fast as I can. And saw firsthand the transition from TrackPhone to Razor to the iPhone. They're well acquainted with the changing tides of social media and are now highly adaptable, tech-savvy adults, end quote. Under each demographic category, Maverick lists key events for that demographic, preferred social networks, top celebrity influencers, and more, such as the baby boomers are defined by events such as the JFK assassination, Richard Nixon, Watergate, and then the millennials are more defined. Their defining of adult moment was certainly 9/11. The report also details social media platform use with the help of Pew Research. And here some highlights were broken down for that. The most popular social media platform for those 65 and older is Facebook, followed closely by YouTube. The most popular platform for those 18 to 29 is Instagram. For those 30 to 49, as well as 50 to 64, the most popular platform for those two areas are YouTube. So you can download the full 12-page report on my blog, nicholasdettman.blogspot.com. All right, last tip here, and kind of talking about digital audience. So it's a perfect segue to talk about digital marketing tips for small businesses. It's hard to obviously stand out in the digital and internet space. It's so wide and flooded with competition. So for small businesses, it's often hard to compete with the big box brands who have had years to develop the name notoriety and brand recognition. So the mom and pop hardware store is definitely got more of a challenge than trying to compete with Lowe's, Menards, Home Depot, and so forth. Not to mention the bigger box brands have a much more massive budget to work with. They have staff dedicated to it, where small businesses have a much smaller budget and also as many resources. with their digital marketing. However, there is some good news. Digital marketing can be done for small businesses using some really simple tips that I'm going to provide here too. And the one thing small businesses have an advantage on over the big box brands is the personalization. And that is, I've seen that a number of times here over the last several weeks, that personalization is going to a different level, that the need or want for customers to feel like they have a personalized experience is going to be much more valued than we've seen over the last couple of years. So it is much easier for these small businesses to have that person-to-person communication with consumers because small business owners are often embedded in the community. By comparison, the big box brands, yes, they are in the community, but only by location only. Rarely are they actually involved in the community. So your mom and pop coffee shop is more likely to maybe donate to the local high school or donate to the local band, whereas the bigger box brands are not going to do that as often. So that's what separates small businesses from the bigger box brands in terms of digital marketing, is the fact that they can be more personable both in person and as well on the digital space. So how do you do that? Well, for one, and probably the most important, is you got to make sure you have a quality website. And by quality, what I mean here is by a professional looking site, but also a functioning site. Nothing irritates consumers more than having to wait for a slow website to load. To me, in my experience with social or with website design, is keep it simple. Simplicity is best. Yeah, it's great when you have all these animations working, but that can slow website speed. So that's why I just go simple. You don't need anything extravagant to impress people. You just need to have the right content out there, and that's what it means. Several studies have shown that customers will wait less than a few seconds for a website to load. So again, that goes back to if your site takes too long to load, you're creating a negative experience, and that's where you're going to lose your customers. But then once the site is loaded, does it look professional? Social media is a great way to generate leads to a website, but it's the website that provides validation to a business, to a potential consumer. And I say this a number of times. Think of it as social media is the front facing of the house. The website is the living room, with the corresponding rooms of the house being the different sections of your site. If a site is too complicated to navigate, that's a turn off for consumers. Make what they're looking for easy to find. And I mentioned this, and I'll reiterate this: a site with all sorts of graphics and moving parts, such as web animations and so forth. If they load correctly, they look great. But if somebody's on not a fast server, that's going to take a while, and that's going to irritate a customer. So, like I said, simplicity is the best way to go because it doesn't hurt website speed, nor makes the navigation experience easier, and it makes it more effective. Tip number 2 is be on social media. Whether you like social media or not, being on social media is a must in today's digital world. And as I mentioned before, the survey by Pew Research says 70% of Americans are using social media on a monthly basis, and that number is going to continue to grow over the next 5 years into 2026. So simply put, consumers are on social media, and so should your small business. But a couple of things to keep in mind when on social media is you have to be active, post consistently, and you need to engage with consumers. Again, this is going back to that personalization. That's where the small businesses have the advantage. You can have the opportunity to be more personable on social media than you do with like a Home Depot or any other big name company. Find a platform that best fits your target demographics, and you don't have to be on every social media platform. So that's why it's kind of nice to do your research, figure out where your people are. Like, for example, like I mentioned earlier in this podcast, Facebook is leading more toward the elder crowd. So if you have your demographic is people, we'll say 40 and older, more than likely they're going to be on Facebook. Whereas if you're trying to reach the late teens and the college students and even into the people in their early 30s, they're more gravitating toward Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat. And then here also, social media is a fraction of your marketing strategy. It should not be your entire strategy. It's a great way to embrace or implement your overall strategy, but it cannot be the solve-all, and it is not the solve-all solution. And the last point I'll make here is be transparent, and we've kind of talked about this already today, where this is going to be one of the biggest ones in marketing strategy, let alone a digital one, as we wrap up 2021 and move into 2022 and beyond. So be clear and concise in what you're communicating to your customers and your potential ones as well. Understand what your customers need from you and what you need from them. Concentrate on not what product and service you're selling, but why. Author Simon Sinek once said, quote, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, and what you do simply proves what you believe. It's a great tip, and it's a great way to kind of think about how you want to market your business, big and small, on digital, social, or whatever avenues or platforms you want to use. So that was quite a bit lengthy on the podcast here, probably the longest one we've had, but like I mentioned at the beginning, we had a lot of great topics that needed to be discussed. So I'm really glad you can join me today here on the Dettmann Media Podcast. Again, quick thanks to our sponsors, 5 Star Complete Asphalt Services, as well as the West Bend Theater Company. That wraps up today's podcast. Thanks again for listening, and we will talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.